Hi, and welcome back to another Basics of Music Theory lesson. Today we're going to go over the G and F clef, also known as the treble and bass clef, respectively. We'll start with the treble clef. Like I said, it's also called the G clef, and the reason for that is meant to be a very highly stylized G. And if you squint your head and, hold your breath until stars start to appear, you can kind of see it, but at this point it's so stylized you can barely tell. Now, the reason it's called the G clef is because it tells you which line represents the note G, and it's where the swirl happens right around this line. That tells you, okay, this line is the G. Now, you could move the treble clef around, move it up or down, and then you would, if it were to move up so that it went around the space, you'd know that that space is the G, but you pretty much only see it in this position at this point. You'd have to look really back at early music to find exceptions to that. Now, in case I didn't make it clear by indicating it before, you have lines and you have spaces, and both of those are just different notes, and the notes go ultimately from this G, because that's what this clef is, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, and downward would be G, F, E, but for the most part it's easier to learn all the names of the lines and learn all the names of the spaces, and then put them together is generally a faster way to memorize it for most people. Now, if it just works for you that you look at it and know, that's great for you, but here are the kind of acronyms that have been kind of commonly used to teach it. For the lines in the treble clef, we have E, G, B, D, F, and that can be every good boy deserves fudge. Now, you can make these acronyms whatever you want. The only important thing is that you remember. I've heard things like every good, or even George Bush drives fast. Like, it doesn't matter really what you make it. Say you hate fudge, you can make it every good boy deserves fruitcake. I don't know why you would want fruitcake over fudge, but you can do it. If you remember it, that's great. Now, the spaces are the one thing that doesn't really have an acronym, though you could make one up because they just spell the word face. We have F-A-C-E going from bottom to top, and so, face. That's just it. Nothing more to say about it, really. Now, this is the bass clef. It's also known as the F clef, and basically if you were to draw a line between, instead of the dots, then it would look like an F, and that one I do actually see. And it's called the F clef because it tells you where the F is, and it's the line between the two dots. So if you were to move the bass clef down so that you have a dot on that line and that would tell you that this space is F. But once again, for the most part, you pretty much just see the bass clef right there, and so that's all you have to worry about. Now, our acronyms for this, for the lines: great big dogs fight animals. And then for the spaces, you can do all cows eat grass. Once again, make up your own acronyms if it will help you remember it better. Doesn't really matter, you just need to memorize this. Now, where the notes actually are in your instrument will vary from between instrument and instrument. You don't play guitar the same way you play keyboard, the same way you play violin, so the note locations will ultimately change. One thing that we'll also eventually talk about is the difference between written pitch and concert pitch, because sometimes the note on the page isn't actually the note that you're hearing, but that's a slightly more advanced concept that we'll get into later. Now, the other thing I want to kind of say about the relation between these two clefs is right here we have C's for both of them. Now, you'll notice that both of these C's are not on the ledger lines. One's below and one's above. Now, the way you kind of add those notes in is you just write in a ledger line for every other thing. So I could just have a D in this empty space right below the ledger line, or I can then, for the C note, I then write it slightly lower and put a line through it. If I wanted to get down to a B, I would just have this same line but write the note under it. It doesn't really matter going the opposite way. Similar, B would have no extra ledger lines above it. The C obviously has the one ledger line going through it, and if I wanted to write a D, I'd write it just a little bit higher, and I'd draw the ledger line, and I'd make the D over it. Now, these C's are the same note, just where they're located in different clefs. So both of these clefs are meant to indicate things relatively close to each other. There are ways of making it so that they are farther apart and showing changes in octaves, but we'll get into that later. All you need to know is that there's a way to go from this clef and to this clef, and in fact, on piano, one thing that is sometimes used is called the grand staff, and it's basically just a treble clef and a bass clef with a bracket on it. And I wrote both the C's here, and depending on how you write music, you can end up writing it just, you can have them closer together and have the C's basically meet in the middle, and then it just switches over to treble clef over here or bass clef down here. It doesn't really matter, but I wanted to point out that there is a grand staff that combines these two clefs. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about how to read bass and treble clef. Um, Next week we'll go over some of the other slightly less common clefs, but yeah. Hope you're having a great day and hope you come back to the channel soon. Alright, bye-bye.